Hey, what's good everyone, your local Iceman here. Today's episode I'm going to talk about blade adjustment, and I'm going to say it's probably going to be a controversial subject, probably one of the most controversial subjects I've covered, if Zamboni driving can be controversial. Different drivers come different rinks and stuff, and from what I understand, there's certain rinks that you do not adjust the blade at all. You don't touch the wheel that raises and lowers the blade, and I'm going to assume at this point you've watched some of this video so you know what I'm talking about the blade adjustment wheel. But from what I gathered, some rinks do things differently. In some rinks, you don't touch the blade wheel at all. In other rinks, you do adjust it, and then there's some places in between. I don't know how that really could be. But I guess the big question, one great philosophical debate, I guess, is whether you're going to adjust the blade wheel or not, or how much you're supposed to adjust or not. So I hope just to really go over the basics and share my philosophies, and I think at the end, basically what I'm going to say is it depends on your rink and your rink floor and on how level your concrete is. So I could see if you have super level concrete, you're not going to be moving your blade around a lot. Maybe it's over the creases. But if you have waves in your ice like we do, and if it's not as significant as other places, you're going to have to adjust your blade just a little bit. So I made a list of things that I thought that would affect the Zamboni's ability to cut the ice, or things that affect how we adjust the blade on the Zamboni. Now again, this is going to vary from rink to rink, and I think I don't want to stress that enough, and how level your concrete is. And let's go ahead and put that one out for the first thing. The things that affect how you adjust your wheel, it really depends, in my opinion, how level your concrete is. Like if you have really level concrete, like I said earlier, you're not going to have to adjust the blade as much. I would still recommend adjusting the blade over the creases, because that's areas where you churn a lot and you kind of overlap that area a lot. And basically any area where you overlap a lot, you may want to just bring your blade wheel, half a turn or a turn, depending on how sharp your blade is and how soft your ice is. But in generally, if you have pretty wavy concrete like we do, and there's certain areas where you have to raise the blade up because you had the little hump in the concrete, and again, the goal is to do enough ice minutes and during the off times and at night, whatever, to get that ice thick enough so you can just do a nice clean shave, and you're not going to have to turn the wheel up and down over those trouble spots. But generally, if you got really level concrete, you're not going to be adjusting your wheel very much. Maybe a turn over the creases, and again, I recommend, like at our rink, I start on one side of the rink, my passes, then I alternate and go to the other side of the rink to start my passes. And I think people think I'm probably messing up because when I end, I go and end up going the other way. Like if I'm going out the public skate end versus coming the other way. It's just that's just to distribute the wear over the ice and how the Zamboni cuts the ice, and mainly your overlap points. Because if you always start against the player benches like here, like I was taught to do, when you come around again, you're gonna overlap a few feet. You're gonna double cut that area, and that area itself has a lump in the concrete, so it's kind of typically thin. So if you're not careful, you can really shave that area down and have some bright paint there. So I recommend to start your Zamboni patterns on different sides of the rink, or different spot, drop your conditioner in different spots, so that overlap point kind of changes. You're not always overlapping the ice at one point. So other than as smooth as your concrete, and I kind of only mentioned it, is how warm your ice is and how warm the ice temperature is. So obviously from winter to summer, even though the building's insulated, but from summer to winter when it's really cold, when you get like 25 degree days out and it's 10 degrees at night, the ice is pretty hard. And I back up the settings so the system doesn't run as hard, but the ice still is pretty hard during the winter time. Whereas during the summertime, even though I turn the settings up a little bit, throughout the day and late to the evenings, that ice gets kind of sweaty, and I guess it all depends how much money you want to spend on keeping your ice cold and how hard you want to keep it. It's kind of a balance, I guess. You just have to wait a couple extra minutes during the summertime for the ice to set up. Unfortunately, it's not as busy, so we have that time. And a lot of rinks take their ice out during the summer, so they don't have to deal with that. But during the winter time, the ice is usually harder and a little easier to set up, and it freezes quicker. And as well as even during the winter time, from day to night, the temperature will fluctuate just a little bit. And unfortunately for us, the sensor that controls the pump and everything is located right next to the pump. We don't have sensors in the ice, nor do we have infrared sensors going down. So the lag time on our system is a little bit greater than if the sensors were located in the ice. And our pump computer doesn't really talk to the compressors. We don't have that kind of advanced computer. They both have computers, but we're not really communicating with each other like newer systems. So as the pump speeds up because the ice is getting warmer, the brine itself starts, and I kind of get off subject, so I'll stop right there. So at nighttime, the ice is a little bit warmer, especially after multiple loads. If you have 5 or 6 events in a row that are only an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half, and typically if it's even on a cold day, the ice will somewhat warm up, so it's going to be a little bit easier to cut than in the mornings where the ice has had time to recover. Then you do your first cut like at 8 o'clock, one at like 10 o'clock, the one at 11:45. That's typically what kind of happens here. Your ice is a little bit harder than like the 7:30 cut at night, especially like the 8:45 and the 10:15. And by the time you do the 11:30 cut, it takes much longer for the ice to set up at night than it does during the mornings. I go out there and do a cut and lay 3/4 tank of water because I can, because I have the time, and plus it freezes faster. But if I lay 3/4 tank of water at 10:15 at night, it's going to be a lake out there for a while. So the outside temperatures as well as the day-to-day temperatures of the ice really affect how you're going to set the blade, at least in my opinion. You may have to adjust it a little bit so it doesn't bite as much because it's just taking so much up when the ice is softer. And when it's not soft, you're going to really have to dig in a little bit more to try to get a bite. I guess that's another video, is how warm we keep the ice. Just really quickly, it's ideally, I guess for hockey, I believe it's like 22 to 24 degrees, the ice temperature itself. And figure skaters like it a little bit warmer, between 26 and 28. I like a little bit softer ice. Just from my experience, I've had coaches and Zamboni drivers and hockey players, I guess, like figure skate coaches too, that come from like Southern California versus the Midwest. And the Midwest, their ice is typically a little bit harder than the people in Southern California. So the people in Southern California kind of are used to soft ice. They like soft ice, whereas the people from Minnesota, they don't, the hard ice doesn't bother them as much. And there is a thing about ice being too hard and too cold. It gets too brittle. Your skate will skip across it versus being able to dig into it to make your turns. Having ice that's too hard is not good, and having ice that's too soft is not good. And one thing about ice temperature, there's nothing that kills the ice more than like a public skate with 250 people out there skating for an hour. You go out there and do the ice after that, ice is pretty warm. It's soaked up all that body heat. I mean, yeah, hockey guys beat up the ice pretty hard, but they usually don't really raise the temperature of the ice as much as a community skate or a public skate. And the wear pattern they have is more in a circle. So in that situation, I kind of do 3 passes, then go up the middle. So I get most of the wear. If I do 2 passes or 1 pass, then there's really 1 more pass that I don't get. I get right away, but it's not until the end until I get the last of the significant amount of powder that's left on the ice. So if you do 3 passes and go up the middle, to me it's a little bit better. So anyway, even after like 150 people out there for an hour, it really raises the ice temperature up. And so you go out there with the Zamboni, if you have the blade set at a particular setting, and for ice that's kind of much harder, it's going to dig up a lot more. So you're going to fill that tank up really quick. Another thing that affects your blade adjustment is how sharp your blade is. If you put a blade on it and you go out there and do the first cut on that blade's going to cut really good, I'll tell you that. But if you've gone 2 weeks without changing a blade, because that's what some rinks, they say a week to 2 weeks. We used to do it twice a week. I got it down to once a week now. During the busy season, if we have a bunch of games on the weekend, like a couple Western games, a couple Blazer games, I'll change it on a Thursday, Friday for the weekend, and change it again on a Monday. Typically, 1 week is the best, I think. But in the summertime, you maybe go a couple weeks. We got this new 32-degree blade. They say you get 2 weeks on one edge. But anyway, as your blade gets duller, you're gonna have to dig in the ice a little bit more from the very beginning when the blade is sharp versus towards the end when you have to switch it out. You can tell when you have to, it's not digging as good. And when you get a fresh blade on there too, like the powder that comes out it's much more soft and fluffy, and fresh blade really cuts the ice really good. And ideally, I guess, once a week would be the best, or I don't know, I'm sure AHL rinks, I bet they put a new blade on there for every game. So not a new blade, but a sharp blade. But anyway, how sharp your blade is really affects on how you're going to adjust your wheel, at least in my opinion. Again, I already touched on this, if the condition of the ice. If the ice is totally beat up, it's got a bunch of cuts in it, and there's a lot of powder over the top, well, you're going to be taking a lot of snow in really quick. And in some scenarios, you may have to do double cuts, or you just have to taper the blade off so you get a full tank and go out there and do a second cut. But if the ice hasn't been really cut up, there's been a few skaters out there, even to get a school group of 50 little kids, but they're not really digging into the ice. It's just a lot of surface powder. When you go out there with the Zamboni, it's gonna take a little bit more effort, a little more blade to dig into the ice if you want to take a full tank. In some situations, I'll just maybe shoot for, I don't know, half a tank and just lay a lot of water if I want to build the ice up. But if you want a full tank and you're really looking you got still got some ruts out there from like I say a drop-in before or a hockey practice before, and you got some ruts you want to get rid of, and you're shooting for a full tank, you may have to dig the blade down a little bit more to get the same amount of powder as if there's tons of powder out there already. And so conditioning the ice again affects how you're going to adjust the blade wheel. And the next thing is basically the maintenance on the rink. How often do you edge? How often do you do your cross cuts, your figure eights and the quarters to get the corners down? If your quarters start getting banked and your edges start getting banked, if you don't keep up on your ice maintenance, your blade, you can't really get a good bite in your blade if your ice is curved, with the Zamboni blade being kind of flat. If you get a bull ice effect, you're not going to really be able to cut into the ice very well. And I see that a lot. That happens here as we come out of the ice. There's a little ramp that builds up, so I try to double edge that area and try to really shave as I come through. I don't hit the crease, I come behind the crease and try to shave that ramp down, because there's times where you can't really get a good cut because it's kind of slanted. But once you do an edge and a blade dips down there and it shaves off, when you start doing that, I mean, the ice itself starts looking much more smoother. It's easier to cut. You crank down the wheel in a bowl rink, you're not going to be able to cut part of the rink, so it's always going to look crappy. So it's really important to keep up on your edging and your ice maintenance and do your cross cuts, so you get rid of the constant, not the ruts, but the grooves you make in the ice from always going up the middle, up the middle, up the middle. It's like mowing your lawn just one direction every time. You want to change it up and mow it the other direction and come across it, and so you get rid of those lines. And so basically ice maintenance is, in my opinion, another thing that affects your blade adjustment and how you're going to adjust a blade. If you have a level rink, level ice, you're not going to have to dig your blade down as much that if you don't have level ice. So it's really key. Like basically, if you control a lot of factors, your ice temperatures and your blade, and keep your ice level flat, you're not going to have to do, in your concrete level, you're not going to really have to do a lot of blade changing. But if you have unlevel concrete, your ice is not level, you've got huge temperature fluctuations in the ice, then you're going to have to adjust your blade a little bit more than if you didn't. And one last thing, again, I probably missed a few, but one last thing, at least for us, because with our Zamboni, we have to drive outside to dump snow. We don't have a dump tank pit right here, so our studded tires tend to wear out a little bit faster. And what I've noticed, when our tires, the treads are fine, and the studs, most of them are there to just get loose. And as you come out of the corners, because you're losing momentum as you're coming into the corner, you're slowing down just a little bit before you go out, and plus you're trying to shave in the corners a little bit. So with the studded tires on the ice, as you come into the corners and you make your turn, you kind of lose momentum a little bit, and the studded tires start spinning on the ice. And if you are not careful and cognizant enough to raise your blade up real quick, the Zam will kind of stall on there, and you just sit there and start spinning. You may not have this problem if you have a snow pit where you dump your snow, but like us, since we drive outside and our studded tires get worn out and we make kind of turns, it kind of wears them out a lot. When we get on the ice after a couple years, and it makes it really hard in the corners, and the Zamboni starts sliding a little bit in the corners. Coming into the corners, not much of an issue, but coming out of the corners is the issue, and the tires start spinning and stuff. The last couple times we were able to put some more studs on the tires in areas where they didn't stud them. I know there's mechanisms that you could buy that you could re-stud tires and stuff, but those are a little bit expensive, and our local tire company has been treating us good lately, so we got a good deal on tires. But again, that's really one thing that affects how you adjust the blade. If your studded tires are old and they're spinning and stuff, and you're gonna have to raise that blade up because you're not gonna be able to cut into the ice, because when you start cutting the ice, you have friction on the ice and drag, and it just slows you down. And a few good tips, I guess, before I show you some things on the Zamboni. If you're unsure where the blade adjustment is, because sometimes here people raise it up before. I was taught to raise it up before you go off the ice and you put it back down. And so technically, I guess that's one of the things that I didn't put on the list, is if some guy brings up 5 churns and one guy brings up 3 churns, It's like, well, then, you know, you go out there and you don't know if to put it down 3 or 5 turns. I see that's where some people don't want people touching the blade wheel, because once it's set, it shouldn't be touched. One thing you could do is you go out there and you drop the conditioner on the ice, and you could do this with the towel up or down, I guess, but don't turn your water on. Go out there and drop the conditioner and go across the middle, because technically it's supposed to be the flattest part of the rink, and just slowly lower your blade down and look behind, and you'll see scrape marks start appearing. And if you have some gaps in your scrape marks, then you're gonna need to go a little bit lower. And also, I look down in between. There's got little openings between in the conditioner, as well as between where the controls are. You can start seeing snow pile up down there and start shooting forward. As soon as you start getting snow coming into the tank, where you know it's biting pretty good, and the more it's coming, you know, you're really looking for a consistent snow intake into the tank that's consistent throughout your whole cut. I've noticed again, with your rink is not level, and depending how much use there is, as you come across the middle, it seems like it picks up a lot more snow. The blade bites the ice a little bit easier than in the corners. Again, that's some to the bowling effect, as well as the fact that there's a lot more powder in the middle, whereas a lot more skating is done in the middle of the ice for a hockey game or a drop-in. And they're not so much against the corners and against the boards. But you go out there and dry the conditioner for a few feet, you can really see the scrape marks confirm the blade is indeed cutting the ice and across the whole length of conditioner. And a couple of pro tips as far as driving the Zamboni, like it's recommended, and I definitely agree with this, and it's one of kind of different philosophies, but when I drive the machine, when I get going, my foot is all the way down on the pedal, and I use the throttle. You set the throttle, electronic throttle, but you set the clutch at a certain speed to where my foot's all the way down. So as I'm coming up the middle of the ice, I'm going the same speed every time. Now, if I have to slow down for an area to lay some more water, yeah, I may do that. But ideally, if you're going out there for a good cut and your ice is level and you have enough ice over your concrete, you're not worried about that. You want to kind of leave your blade the same and drive the same speed as you're going through the center of the rink. And as you come through your turns and over the crease, you may have to take your foot off the pedal just a little bit to make the turns. And that's where you kind of ease off your water so you don't lay more water. As you come out of your turn, you want to put your foot all the way down and drive the same speed. I used to just kind of drive it like a car, where I have my foot at a certain halfway point, but it's not as exact. Like you could get away with it and make decent ice and stuff, but it's not as consistent that if you set the clutch to where your foot's all the way down every time you come up the middle. So that's what I recommend. But as far as blade adjustment, it's just another variable that you're trying to control. So basically, in summary, you're going to be adjusting the blade based on the conditions of the ice, the temperature, the use, how level your ice is, and how much maintenance you've done on it, as well as how level your concrete is. Not a great debate, but there is a little bit of philosophy as far as how much you move your blade wheel around. Even at the most extreme, I don't think you should be moving it more than 2 turns up and down. I think you just need to take some pressure or some bite off the wheel as you go through your overlaps. So, a half a turn to a turn, I think most of the times will do it. But if you're operating in the extremes, if you have to go down 2-3 turns and back up 2-3 turns, I think then you probably not doing enough ice maintenance, and your concrete is super unlevel probably, which, in some of our cases, when after a busy weekend, I come in Monday mornings, there's certain areas where I just slow down and dump a lot of water. You still want to shave that ice, and I do raise it up a churn or 2, but those are really extreme circumstances where I'm doing like 3-4 churns. Each rink is different, each situation is different. It's where it looks like it's really easy to drive the Zamboni, and I say yes, it is. That's the easy part, and that's where it becomes, I want to say artistic, because there is really no room for interpretation, and there's more than one way to do it, but you can't just allow this open, like, just do what you want if it feels good type mentality. So there is a structured way to cut the ice, but there is, it's not a closed motor task, so to say. It's an open task where things have changed. It's not, I'll go too deep in this open closed motor task, because it's a good example, but maybe not the best. Kind of see the ice is going to tell you how to cut it. In the sense that it's a closed motor task from when you go out there, it doesn't change from when you start. The task doesn't change once you start your cut. The variables don't change. However, from ice cut to ice cut to ice cut, it changes. So when you go out there, the ice is going to tell you how it wants to be cut. The ice is going to tell you how much water you should lay. Granted, if you want to lay some extra water to do some ice maintenance, that's something else. But the ice, if it's really cut up, it's like a sponge. It's going to soak up a lot more water than if it's not cut up, if it's got a smooth surface. It's going to accept more water, so to say. Same thing with the blade. So if the ice is more cut up, it's going to probably need a little bit more blade. And if the ice is not so much cut up, you may not, I'm not saying you're going to need less blade. It depends what your surface looks like. If you still have a bunch of ruts from the previous rental, previous session, you may want to go a little bit deeper with the blade, even if it hasn't been skated on very much. The ice is really going to tell you how it wants to be cut. So learn how to read the ice. Look how much powder is on the ice, how cut up it is. Again, the temperatures and stuff, because I know every rink's a little bit different. So that's one thing I've done with the trainings, with the star trainings. Like I should be saying this, but they have this somewhat elitist mentality because they're all used to working in these ideal situations. And maybe most of you do, but some of us don't. So we have other variables we have to control for. And we don't have the most responsive filtration system. We don't have the most level concrete. But, you know, if you learn that and you know that, there's ways to compensate for that. So we have great ice. The visitor teams love our ice, maybe because they win here a lot, but the visiting team loves their ice because we do ice maintenance on it. We edge it, we chip it, we care about it. So, and they really having hard ice too, I think, is a little bit key too. I think harder ice is better than softer ice for hockey. I'm gonna call this part 1, theories and principles behind blade change. I'm gonna do a part 2, some on ice stuff. So I'm gonna do some stuff, I'm gonna do it on the ice, show you how to drag the blade on the ice, kind of how to adjust the wheel and look at the drag marks on the ice. And then give you a few extra pro tips that I'll throw at you guys. Please comment below if you have anything to add to the conversation about changing a blade, how much blade you should change. By all means, if I left something out, throw it down. If you think that what I said doesn't make any sense, I'm just talking out my let me know too. Alright guys, hope you learned something today. And like the local Iceman says, stay cool.